back to the Muslim Street. You're listening live from WTAN 1340. This is Laila Abdelaziz with my co-host Malik Aziz. Today we're talking to Akbar Muhammad, who we're discussing the life of Malcolm X, the significance of Malcolm X, and the power and the inspiration there. That was a quote of Malcolm X discussing what the price of freedom was, and according to Malcolm, the price of freedom is death. That was how entrenched and how I guess just his life was encompassed by his struggle. And ironically, you know, in February 21st of 1965, Malcolm X did pass away. Akbar, thank you for joining us today on the show. And Malik? Yeah, so Akbar, I got a question for you. When we gonna get your book out? This is important that you begin to catalog your many travels, the many struggles that you've been involved in, the perspective on those struggles here in the United States and abroad.
Okay. Well, I do want to say that in this last 7 days, my oldest daughter encouraged me to take 3 things that I want to do. This is my 70th year, and one of them is to finish my memoirs, and I really want to do it. I just have to tell this. I was in New Zealand, and they have a tremendous problem with the Maoris in New Zealand between drugs and alcohol and the young boys sniffing glue. They have gangs there. One is the Black Power gang, the Mongol mob, and motorcycle gangs. And so one of the lawyers told me that he couldn't, you know, he defends them. He said he didn't know what to do with them. It's so bad they have filled all of the jails there. So he gave them copies of Malcolm X's autobiography. Now, they don't know, you know, in New Zealand, among the Maoris, those are the indigenous people that the Europeans found when they conquered the land. They don't know anything about Islam. But the book has such a profound effect on them in terms of changing their life. And this is what we have to look at with Malcolm. The thing about Malcolm that people may overlook, that he went into prison with this thug mentality. He was in a life of crime. But Islam shook him. Islam woke him up. Islam turned his life around. And instead of being a liability to the black community, he became an asset. And he went out and he went to work. And his work was bringing young black people to a level of consciousness. The spiritual direction was Islam in their life that made them feel themselves and made them feel that they had the power and the strength within themselves to overcome drugs and alcohol and dysfunctional families and all of that went with that. Islam gave them that kind of confidence, and that's what Malcolm articulated. And then he would add the other dimension to it, social justice for black people in America.
Yeah, can you talk about as we talk about Malcolm and Malcolm personally, he led a very clean life. He prayed 5 times a day. He didn't smoke. He didn't drink. He was never late to meetings. In the context of black leadership as true role models, can you talk a little bit more about some of this personal stuff about Malcolm that we wouldn't necessarily read in books?
Well, he was very disciplined. You know, in the Nation of Islam, he learned from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to eat 1 meal a day, and Malcolm really believed in that. You know, you see he was tall and very thin, but he believed in that discipline. He came away from a life of drugs and alcohol and criminal life in terms of his personal life, bad eating. And when he became a Muslim, he became conscious enough that he put all of that on the side. His ability to organize and make things happen. He felt that if you were in a city working in the cause of Islam and working in the cause of your movement that you believed in, then you shouldn't be in that city waiting for something to happen. You should make things happen. And Malcolm was that kind of person. His ability to inspire other men to get involved is one of his greatest attributes. He was an inspirational person, and when I first sat in the audience and heard him, I was inspired. All of the young men, 18 to 25, that heard Malcolm X, they wanted to be what they saw on that stage as he delivered that message, and that was the source of inspiration. Then his love of history made people delve into history and his quoting of books. And so what he felt is that there was a revolution going on in America, and the revolution that was going on in America was the black man coming out of the pains of slavery and what he had suffered, and into that he injected what he had learned as a Muslim and a member of the Nation of Islam, and he felt that we could organize our people and have an impact on the masses of black people for a positive direction. If you look at all of the individuals that Malcolm inspired that went on to build their own organizations, not necessarily Muslims, but the organizations that they built with the inspiration of Malcolm were all organizations to build a level of consciousness among people.
Yeah, now
I mean that's the Malcolm that I know.
Right, and Akbar, on that point, I gave a lecture here in Tampa a couple months ago, and the title of it was "The Transition of Black Leadership." I will give that lecture again next Friday down in Orlando at the University of Central Florida. And Muslims in America have led in the struggle, set the specifications for the struggle in the 1950s. As we moved through the Black Power movement in the 1960s, the move for more consciousness in the 70s, the move for unity in the 80s, et cetera, et cetera. And it seems like over the last 5 to 7 years, that has disappeared. Can you talk about some of the issues around that?
Yes. Because that's very, very interesting. You know, there are great brothers in America who speak into the issue. Minister Farrakhan is one, even Al Sharpton with his political direction now. Jesse Jackson being 71 years old now, he's not out there as active. But the thing about it is many of the young brothers who get involved have Muslim names. You look at them, they have Muslim names, and it shows you the power of Islam in their life and how Islam is a source of inspiration for them. Yes, in the last few years, it has not had the kind of momentum. You don't see the brothers actively involved and champion the injustice that falls on the black community. And a lot of this has to do with the movement of drugs in our community. And even though it's not talked about as it was talked about when we had the crack epidemic in our community, it still exists.
Brother Akbar, we have a caller on the hold. I want to bring in the caller to ask a question. We're running out of time really quickly. But caller, this is James from Fort Lauderdale. Really quick, what's your question?
Yes, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, my question is, had Mr. Malcolm lived, had he been still alive, from your vantage point, from your perspective, how do you think he would have interpreted what has transpired, particularly in black America since the 60s?
Took my last question. Perfect.
Yeah. Well, Malcolm would be approximately 85 or 86 this year, and I think if Malcolm was still alive, he would be disappointed in a lot of things. He would be disappointed that Nelson Mandela freed South Africa, didn't stand up to the extent that he let white people know that you're not going to run the economy, that we will have to run our economy. He would be disappointed at the hope of the United States of Africa. Muammar Gaddafi, a Muslim, was leading that, and that we stood by and watched him killed by the Western interests. He would be disappointed that we closed our schools down and sent our children off into majority white schools, bust them into areas, and these teachers that were teaching our children could not inspire our children, could only make them hope for a job in America and make them think or feel that the struggle for equity in America was over. He would be disappointed. He would be disappointed at the disunity of the Muslim community, where he was preaching unity. He would be disappointed at the fact that now we have all kinds of Muslims, but we can't get together to do concrete programs that will affect our community. 10 million Muslims in America. And most people who look at the Muslim community say that the largest number of those Muslims are indigenous African-American Muslims, but we don't have the ability to work together.
Thank
so
you,
I think
Akbar.
that Malcolm would be disappointed if he was still alive today of where we have gone.
Thank you so much, Akbar, and thank you, James, for that great question. You're listening to The Muslim Street. Thank you for joining us as we had a great discussion about Malcolm X. I mean, this conversation could go on for hours and hours more. But before we let you guys go, discussing the state of the African American community today, discussing the state of communities, minority communities within the United States that are struggling for their rights, for their liberties, for what they think is to their own. I think I want to leave you all with one of the main teachings I think I get out of Malcolm X, and I think that a lot of conscious civil rights activists, a lot of community activists, a lot of community rights activists will get out of Malcolm X, and that is that Malcolm really believed and delivered the message that as long as you beg another man to set you free, you'll never be free. Freedom is something you do for yourself. So let's think about that tonight, and we'll bring back more on Malcolm X. Thank you so much for joining us on the Muslim Street.